What's happening, everybody? The 6-5 49ers are on fire. Traveling to a house of horrors in Seattle to face a reeling 3-8 Seahawks team who will try to play spoilers. We'll talk about how these teams got here, key matchups, predictions for Week 13, Locked On 49ers, Locked On Seahawks, Thursday crossover pod coming at you right now.
You are Locked On 49ers, your daily San Francisco 49ers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to another Locked On Podcast Network crossover episode. Brian Peacock here with Eric Crocker, Locked On 49ers, and down below there is Corbin Smith of Locked On Seahawks. This episode brought to you in part by Stat Hero. It's the first of its kind daily fantasy sports platform where it's you versus the house in head-to-head fantasy matchups, winner take all. Sign up for free right now at stathero.com/lockedon. Use promo code LOCKEDON for a 100% deposit match. Corbin, what's happening, my man? I know you just came fresh from a Pete Carroll press conference. Is Pete like up? Is he like, yeah, we're ready to go. Good matchup against the 49ers. We're going to run the table to go make the playoffs. Or is he maybe looking at Maui in the offseason and maybe looking at maybe how retirement might look? And is Schneider looking at, hey, how many first round picks can we get for Russell Wilson? Like, what's your vibe right now with this team? How are they handling a 3-8 start to the season, which is obviously hugely disappointing?
Well, I think Pete Carroll's handling it fairly well in regard to he's still going all in. You know, they're mathematically not eliminated from the playoffs yet somehow. I don't know how, but that's what happens when you play in a mediocre conference, I guess. But they still have like a 0.6% chance, which I told him that today. And he was like, you can have less than 1%. And it's like, yes, coach, you can. I did ask him, you know, are you at the point now, this is uncharted territory where you might want to play some younger players and start filtering them into the lineup to start preparing for the future. And he immediately shot that down. No, not at all. They're not going to be doing that. He's like, you'd love to play everybody, but we need to start blowing people out. Then they can get in the game. So I get the sense that Pete Carroll, you know, he's being his typical optimistic self that we can still get this rolling. At the same time, that it also feels like there's kind of a sense of denial in the response that he just gave there, because you're 5 games under 500. You're in last place. Your quarterback's playing the worst football of his entire career. The defense has been playing great for the most part, but it hasn't mattered. You're still losing games. It just doesn't seem like this season has any way to be salvageable at this point. And you would think that you'd start wanting to play younger guys. Maybe that will be what they choose to do down the road. But right now, he's the boxer that still thinks he's got one last punch in him. He thinks his team still got one last punch in him. So they're not giving in yet. So I guess from that standpoint, he's handling it okay.
To kind of help him out, and maybe, you know, some fans that may be listening, or, you know, people that cover the Seahawks as well, there is a little bit of optimism. You know, I'm going to give you guys a little bit here where 49ers were kind of in a similar situation. They were 2-4, and the question started to be asked, hey, when do you start playing some of the younger guys? And Kyle Shanahan's response was, when we are mathematically eliminated from the playoffs. But that wasn't the case, and he was still continuing to go all in on turning that season around. And to this point, now he has, right? 49ers have won 3 straight games. They are the 6th seed and really a half game out from being the 5th seed, right? They're right behind the Rams. So I believe the Seahawks are 2 games out, and they also own the tiebreaker against the San Francisco 49ers. So yeah, if I'm Pete Carroll, I'm still going all in. Like, this is not over. And if I have Russell Wilson, like, I definitely feel confident that he can potentially turn this thing around. It just takes that one win and to get the ball rolling in the right direction.
You know, they haven't gotten very many wins this year to speak of. They've lost 6 of their last 7. So it's just been one of those things where each week it's been like, this will be our week. We're going to finally get this thing going, and it just hasn't happened. So I think that the optimism away from Pete Carroll, and this has even been tough on him, the eternal optimist, to be able to handle this, because just not used to this as coach of the Seahawks. They've never been in this situation since he arrived in 2010. Even the 2 teams that missed the playoffs were in the hunt in mid-December. they're really entering December barely having any life in terms of the playoffs. And a lot of these games could be meaningless with their next loss. That's just the reality.
Yeah, and when it comes to being mathematically eliminated, I mean, the Seahawks are the 15 seed, and they may never be mathematically eliminated until week 18, really. And it's interesting because and look, this is what the league loves: ultimate parity. With an extra, there's 17 games now on the schedule and 7 playoff teams in each conference. It's going to take a while to be mathematically eliminated for pretty much every team in the NFL except for the Detroit Lions. Um, Russ obviously had the injury. Are we seeing a hangover from the injury? Did he come back too soon? Because he's playing downright bad. I can't remember a time where he just looked bad like this. And you've got weapons outside like DK Metcalf, 0 targets in the first 3 quarters. Is this an offensive coordinator thing? Is this a Russ not looking his way thing? I don't get it. I don't get any of it. It seems like there would be some things that you could do that would be more quick fixes, and they're not doing those either.
Yeah, I've been thinking that for weeks that, all you got to do is just get Russ going and get a little bit of a run game going, and things are going to start turning around because you look at the roster and think there's just too much talent for them to continue playing like this. And yet now here we are going into week 13. And based on what I've seen, I don't know that fans should have any confidence in Shane Waldron running this offense at this point. I don't know that Russell Wilson is healthy. I mean, he claims he is, but maybe it's more of not being mentally healthy right now. It just seems like he's not playing with the confidence you're used to seeing from Russell Wilson. And this has been a really challenging year for him. His mental coach died from cancer earlier this year. And I think that has been something that has really weighed on him this season. And now he's going through the stretch and he doesn't have Trevor here to talk to. I don't know how much that has in terms of bearing on his play right now, but there's been a lot that has gone on. And so you could point the finger at a number of people. When you're 3-8, everybody's got to shoulder the blame, but there's no question the coordinator, Shane Waldron's really struggled in his first year as a coordinator, calling the plays. And Russell Wilson, especially on the short throws, he's airmailing everything. So maybe that's where the finger's coming into play when he has to really gun it into tight places on shorter throws. He has had a hard time getting on top of the football. His deep ball has looked okay, especially last week on Monday night, looked pretty solid with the deep ball. But the short to intermediate game's really been a struggle. And meanwhile, the 49ers, when these two teams met in week 4, Jimmy Garoppolo got hurt in that game. Trey Lance struggled in his action in the second half. And yet it seemed like this 49ers offense has been able to find life in the last 3 or 4 games.
Yeah, real quick, I do want to ask one question. I saw this kind of, disagreement, or it looked like maybe one of your receivers is a little disgruntled. DK Metcalf, he was kind of pointing to Geno Smith. Was DK asking to get Russell Wilson out of the game? He looked frustrated. He didn't have any targets until the fourth quarter.
Wow.
I don't know that that's what was going on, but I saw it from the press box when it happened. And I kind of had to bat an eye a little bit like, did I just see what I thought I just saw there? But Russell Wilson's not looking for him. It's so bizarre. I mean, that's been the season for the Seattle Seahawks. Just nothing is explainable, and not in a good way. And when you don't target him for 3 quarters to start a game, that's just an embarrassment for the quarterback and for the coordinator. You can't scheme to get him the football. I can see why he's upset. It just seems like the only time Wilson's trying to get the ball to him, he's forcing the issue. And there were times that he was open and didn't make throws to him in the last game. So DK was getting targets when Geno Smith was in there. So I don't think he's trying to get Geno Smith in the game. But at the same time, he might be thinking, Geno was actually trying to throw the ball to me.
Yeah, he was upset. He was pointing to Geno Smith, and I'm like, okay, that can only mean one thing, in my opinion. So yeah, a little trouble in I want to say paradise, but definitely not paradise right now with the Seattle Seahawks.
Oh, fractured locker room. And there was the Geno Smith tweet, I think, about or maybe it was on Instagram, and it sounded like he was kind of throwing shade at Russell Wilson, like he should be the guy. Man, I don't know. It's all coming apart. The 49ers have an opportunity to step
Listen, I drew ire during the game because I tweeted, they'll never do it, but might just be the moment that you make a switch here. And it's because I don't think Russell Wilson is healthy, personally. Wilson's going to say he is, but I just don't think he is. So it's not that I think Russell Wilson is worse than Geno Smith, because I'm not a lunatic. I don't think that. But their offense was more consistent with Geno Smith under center than the last 3 weeks with Russell Wilson. That's just, unfortunately, that's the truth. And I think there have been other football analysts that have seen similar things.
Flipping it to the positive side of things. Last one for you, Corbin, before we flip the script here, and you can ask us some questions about the San Francisco 49ers, these red hot San Francisco 49ers. Is there anything positive happening? Some sleeper players maybe that 49ers fans haven't noticed that might notice this Sunday on the field for the Seahawks?
I don't know if there have been any sleepers as far as, players that have just come out of nowhere that have been playing lights out, but the defense is playing really well. The Seahawks right now are giving up the 6th fewest points in the NFL per game. They gave up 17 to the Green Bay Packers a few weeks ago. They lost that game. They gave up 17 points on Monday night to Washington, had a 4th down and goal stand at the end of the game to give Russell Wilson a chance to go down and tie the game. The defense has done what they need to do to win football games, and they're just getting absolutely no support. And Jamal Adams is playing like the player they thought he was going to be the last 3 or 4 games. He's been all over the field. He's got 2 interceptions. So those that think he can't play coverage, he's kind of been holding the football up. Hey, I can play coverage. And so it's been a really weird sequence of events here, how the offense of all things is what ended up leading to Seattle's downfall, because the defense has been pretty darn good for the most part. They had one hiccup against Colt McCoy a couple weeks ago, but otherwise they've been playing much better as of late. And again, it's unfortunate for Seahawks fans because you never would have thought you'd be 3-8 because of your offense not getting the job done. But
yeah,
that's
and
how things have played out.
The Niners had a hiccup against Colt McCoy too. So Colt McCoy's done that a time or two so far this season. All right.
That's kind of what I want to ask you, because I think everybody left the 49ers. I'm going to admit it. I thought the 49ers were toast after that game. The Cardinals are missing so many key players, and to get beaten that way, to give up more than 30 points, it just seemed like, oh man, this team just doesn't seem like they're going to turn things around. And yet it seems like they've kind of been galvanized since that outcome.
Croc, you want to handle that one? It's definitely neck up. I think what changed with the 49ers. It's not a personnel thing. It's not calling different plays. Maybe there's a little bit of that, but there's just a physicality. There's somebody, slapped them all in the face. There was a closed door meeting and they said, look, let's go beat people up like we've done before. We're that team. Let's go do that. And I felt like the Seahawks have an opportunity to do that at some point. We just haven't seen it. And the 49ers just said, enough of this. Let's go bully people around. We've got Trent Williams. Let's run behind him because, there's bodies flying left and right when we run behind him. And we can go do what we want to do. And let's impose our will on the other team instead of letting, the league happen to us and letting fate happen to us. Is that the biggest thing, Croc, to you, this change with the 49ers?
Yeah, it was really frustrating early on because we couldn't put our finger on exactly what was going on with the 49ers. Like right now, you can look at Russell Wilson and say, he's not right. This is not the Russell Wilson we're used to seeing. He's airmailing passes. He does not look healthy, and that can attribute to losses. Well, what the 49ers are going through, it wasn't just one thing that you could pinpoint. The team was relatively healthy. You have playmakers all over the place. The defense has definitely good enough players. It's all the same guys now during this 3-game winning streak. So what was missing? And I think really kind of like what Peacock said, that is from the neck up, that you stop seeing some of the mental mistakes. You see guys starting to take the ball away. And I think that's the biggest thing. The 49ers being able to not just take the ball away, but also not turn the ball over. And I think the turnover differential over the last 3 games is probably the biggest difference as to why they had a 4-game losing streak and switched over to a 3-game winning streak.
I want to pause right there and let the listeners out here know about our friends at Stat Hero before we dive deeper into this game and some key matchups and some predictions coming up, because nobody plays daily fantasy sports to lose. Although, man, it would seem like I've been playing fantasy sports to lose this season. My fantasy leagues have not been going well. Winning feels so much better, but traditional fantasy sports are a long-term losing proposition because you never know who or what you're up against. Stat Hero is the first of its kind daily fantasy sports platform where it's you versus the house in head-to-head fantasy matchups, winner take all. And here's the crazy part. Stat Hero shows you their lineups before you play, and you handpick the team you want to face one-on-one. You think that DK Metcalf breakout's coming? Maybe a Brandon Ayuk breakout's coming this week. It's been slow for DK, but maybe that's where you can slip in and get a little value for some of these players at Stat Hero. This never seen before innovation of a fantasy sports and sports betting hybrid has Stat Hero players clocking odds that are over 4 times better. Why? Because you don't have to compete against thousands of experts or unknowns. Stat Hero puts you in control of your fate. So sign up for free right now at stathero.com/lockedon. It's promo code locked on for that 100% deposit match. Stathero.com/locked on with promo code locked on for a 100% match. Again, stathero.com/locked on. All right, folks, we've got the Thursday crossover right now. Brian Peacock at BD Peacock on Twitter, Eric Crocker at Eric_Crocker from Locked On 49ers, Corbin Smith of Locked On Seahawks. Find his work at Sports Illustrated and find him on Twitter at Corbin Smith NFL. What else are you wondering about when it comes to this 49ers team ahead of this matchup Sunday, Corbin?
Well, when I look at this team and I look at the way they've played as of late, everybody expected this defense was going to be really good going into the season. And I thought that was one of the bigger letdowns early on for San Francisco. You talked about the physicality, but in the couple games I've watched recently, the thing that has really jumped out to me is it seems like they have been getting after the quarterback a lot more, particularly Nick Bosa. He looks like the Nick Bosa pre-injury these last several games. How much has that made an impact on the way that this 49ers defense has played during this win streak?
The pass rush is hugely important, right, Croc? I guess built around the pass rush. So if you don't have that, then the 49ers defense really struggles. And luckily they have had Nick Bosa doing Nick Bosa things, 11 sacks in 11 games. And if it wasn't for him, they might be in trouble because they're not getting a ton. Occasionally someone will rotate in and give him some help. And we've seen guys like Arden Key, who the Niners got off the scrap heap in the offseason, had 3 sacks in 3 games. He kind of disappeared last week. Ominahu came in, who they traded for, made 1 big play behind the line of scrimmage, but that's the only tackle he's even made as a 49er. So there's been one guy every game to make kind of a play, but it's been Bosa, and that's about it for most of the season. But luckily, the Niners have one of the better pass rushers in the league, and I think he's still continuing to get better coming off that ACL.
I actually think the secondary is kind of holding things together. Again, Nick Bosa has been terrific, but he's kind of been doing it solo, and it's been a group effort. You know, a lot of times if you look at, say 2019 with the 49ers, you could say, man, that defense is firing on all cylinders because of that front. Well, right now, I don't think you can pinpoint to one level of the defense. It just looks like the D line is playing just good enough. The linebackers are playing just good enough, and same with the secondary, playing just good enough. I don't think either level has been purely dominant, even though if you look at some of the statistics, the 49ers pass defense is like 3rd in the NFL. I don't think they necessarily play to that, but they're definitely not bad. So yeah, it's been interesting seeing like how they've kind of brought everything together as a defense as a whole, because the pass rush has been so inconsistent.
And on offense, Deebo Samuel has just been dominant. They've been using him out of the backfield. They've been using him at receiver, just that do-it-all gadget player. And he's one of my favorite players to watch in the league. But he's one of a few players, Fred Warner's also been banged up, that is in question, might not be able to play this weekend. How much do those injuries potentially curb the momentum that this team has had, especially when you're playing a team like the Seahawks that's so desperate to just win a game?
That's what kind of worries me about this game. I feel like this is that game where the Seahawks can get right against the 49ers, and the Niners are without Deebo, who's been their entire offense this year, and Fred Warner's, the captain back there in the middle of the defense. They're without him. They've got a bunch of other linebackers banged up. So former undrafted linebacker Azeez Al-Shaair, who's been an awesome find and been really good for the 49ers defense. It's going to be up to him. They're going to have to, tape together the rest of the linebacking crew for this game. Greenlaw's most likely out. So I'm as interested as you are to see how the 49ers make up for this. They've got a good running game with Elijah Mitchell. They've got weapons like Brandon Ayuk, who's been good and is coming on as the season progresses. They've got George Kittle, one of the best tight ends in the NFL, who's been somewhat underutilized, has been used more as a blocker and been more effective there than as a pass catcher this season. So you would think they could just turn to those guys with those Deebo Samuel touches, but they haven't really played massive roles. I mean, Elijah Mitchell he's got 4 100-yard rushing games this season, but Deebo's so unique. I don't know if you can replace him, but they have weapons and they have players to go to on offense that they haven't used enough. So the passing game side of things is where I'm fascinated to see if they move people around, try to use somebody in a Deebo role, if they just pepper Ayuk and Kittle with targets right out of the gate, or if they try to just pound it down the Seahawks' throat and win it that way. And I'm just as fascinated as everybody to find out what this looks like, because we haven't seen him without Deebo yet this year.
We've seen him without Deebo, like last year, right? Deebo Samuel, I think he played 5 or 6 games. He didn't play a full year. And then put more on Brandon Ayuk's plate. Now, they did some of the similar things like end arounds, and Ayuk was able to score on some of those, but definitely not to the same extent of how they use Deebo Samuel. Deebo Samuel, he's been everything to this offense, whether he's at receiver or at running back. And he is a legit running back when he's back there. They'll line him up. It'll be I formation, and they'll throw a toss to him, or they'll just turn and hand it to him like he's a legitimate running back. And he's broken off big plays. I believe last game he had 60 yards rushing. The game before that against Jacksonville, he had 80 yards rushing, and utilize him as a pure running back. But on top of that, which I think most people would look at him like, oh, well, is he a running back? Is he a receiver? Is he a gadget player? I mean, he has over 1,000 receiving yards, and he has 10 total touchdowns, 5 receiving, 5 rushing. So I don't know if you can replicate what he's doing and just plug and play somebody else in the same role of how you've been utilizing him, but you definitely need some of these other guys to step up. Last week, George Kittle had 1 catch, and it was a screen pass. All right, you're definitely going to need more from him on that. Brandon Ayuk over the last few weeks has definitely stepped up his game, and they've been utilizing him more in the passing game. He had 90 receiving yards last week on 3 receptions, but even then, it seemed like the chemistry between him and Jimmy Garoppolo is slightly off. He had, in the first half, it was like 2 receptions on 6 targets. And he's had, Jimmy Garoppolo kind of miss him high and wide on some different things. So we'll see if they can start to, get more on the same page and have a little bit more, efficiency there. But I think not having Deebo Samuel, that's a big hit to the offense, because we don't know what it's going to look like without him.
Yeah, he's just such a unique playmaker. There are not a lot of guys that you can say he can play running back and look like a natural running back, can play receiver, outside slot, just move them all over the place. So you're going to have several guys that are going to have to fill the gap. With him not being out there, and the fact that George Kittle only had 1 catch last week, as a Seahawks analyst, that actually terrifies me, because this seems like a game, even with the way Jamal Adams has been playing. And like I said, he's been playing at an elite level the last month, but that seems like that would be the matchup that would still be a major problem, because a couple of weeks ago, Zach Ertz went off, had 2 touchdowns, 88 receiving yards against the Seahawks in that game with Colt McCoy playing quarterback. So tight end still remains an area the Seahawks have had trouble. I would think if there's a get-right game for him and Jimmy Garoppolo, this is the opponent, and he's had some success over the years against the Seahawks.
That's a fantastic one. Adams versus Kittle is definitely the matchup I think I would highlight the most. And, Ayuk's a big one going against those corners for the Seahawks. But, Adams is the type of guy, and I'm sure George Kittle was part of the reason the Seahawks wanted to bring someone like Jamal Adams and pay all that to bring him in. So it's time, Jamal, this is your game. This is your guy. And for the 49ers, they have to be looking at it this week and saying, we've got to get George Kittle going. We've got to make some big plays with him. We've got to target him a lot. Kittle and Ayuk have half as many targets on the season almost as Deebo. Deebo's got 92 targets and another 25 carries, averaging 8 yards per carry, averaging 18 yards per catch. So big plays after the catch down the field. It's insane what he's doing. The 49ers have to find a way to replace that, and it's pretty obvious who those guys are going to have to be. It's going to have to be Kittle. It's going to have to be Ayuk. So Kittle versus Adams is going to be a lot of fun. Who is Ayuk going to be seeing most? And by the way, how's DJ Reed? How's our guy DJ Reed doing over there?
Well, he missed a game 2 weeks ago, but he had another nice bounce back performance. Ever since they moved him back to right corner, he's been playing really good football. The secondary in general for Seattle, as bad as it was at the cornerback position in particular, the first 4 or 5 games, they really have looked a lot better. And Sidney Jones now has kind of come into his own the last few weeks because their promising rookie Trey Brown suffered a patellar tendon injury. So that was a huge blow to their secondary because he looked fantastic the first 3 starts that he had. Looked like they found a keeper there. Hopefully he can come back healthy and not miss a step. That's a pretty significant injury to come back from. But DJ Reed's been playing well. Sidney Jones last couple of weeks has looked pretty good. He's been active, coming up and hitting people too. So he's done some nice things for him. And like I said, both the safeties are playing really well. The defense has done what it has needed to do. So they're going to go into this game, especially without Deebo Samuel playing for the 49ers. They're going to come into this game confident on defense with the way that they have been playing. They just have to get some darn support. And that's just been something that has not been there for close to 2 months. They've just not gotten support from their offense.
All right, we've got to move on. We've got to make some predictions in this game for Week 13 before we run out of time here on this Thursday crossover podcast. But I got to remind the folks out there about Bet Online, who has you covered all season for more props, more odds, and more lines than ever before as football season continues to march toward the playoffs for some teams. Bet Online remains your number one spot for all the sports action this season. Head over to the new updated desktop or mobile website. Sign up today and receive your 50% welcome bonus on your first deposit. Just use promo code Locked On to receive that bonus. That is promo code Locked On to get a 50% welcome bonus. Some fun props out there like, will the Lions go 0-16-1 on the season? Or here's one that all the listeners of this particular podcast can have some fun with. Will Matthew Stafford throw a pick 6 for the 4th straight game this week? Find that at betonline.ag and put big money on it. Not only pro football, college football, pro and college hoops, NHL boxing, UFC, poker, blackjack, all your favorite Vegas casino games as well. Don't wait to take advantage of all the amazing offers this season. BetOnline is the fastest and easiest way to bet on all of your favorite sports. BetOnline, where the game starts. All right, guys, we got to make some predictions here. Niners favored by, here we go. Niners favored by 3.5 points on the road. Before I make my prediction, I want to ask you this, Corbin. Let's say Kyle Shanahan comes out there and says, we're going to play bully ball from snap number 1. We're going to run it right down the Seahawks' throat. We're just going to run the ball, 3rd downs and short. Jimmy's going to make some passes over the middle of the field. Beep, bop, boop. We're going to go beat the Seahawks by, 4 points. Would that strategy pay off against the Seahawks? Have the Seahawks been a team where you could go out there, run against them, and play some very old school football against?
I don't know that running the ball early in the season, they were having some issues stopping the run. Antonio Gibson did have 100 rushing yards on Monday night. So they had a little bit of trouble dealing with him and JD McKissick in prime time. But really, most of the season, they've been very good against the run. Alvin Kamara, they held to 2.6 yards per carry. They held James Conner to under 3 yards per carry a few weeks ago. They have consistently done a good job against the run. So I don't know necessarily that is the way to beat this defense. But you mentioned the short passing game. Yeah, dink and dunk it all over the field. That has been the key to beating the Seahawks team. They can't defend screens. Had a couple nice plays against screens by Washington on Monday, but those have been exceptions. Most of the time, teams have been able to crush them with running back and tight end screens, bubble screens out to receivers, all types of screens. They've had trouble with those. So if you're able to do that, they're going to try to take away the deep ball. That has not been something they've given up very often this year, vertical plays, but they will give you those short, intermediate pass plays. And if you were able to dink and dunk your way down the field, Colt McCoy dominated them doing that. So I think from that aspect, and they're going to run the ball. If you wear the Seahawks down and Seattle's offense can't stay on the field, which has been the entire story of the season, then that run game is going to wear them down by the end. I just don't know that you necessarily can come out and we're just going to play bully ball right off the bat and think that that's going to be your best way to beat this defense. Because I don't think that is necessarily their biggest flaw, at least based on what I've seen in the first 11 games.
Croc, I want to go to you first with the predictions because I can tell right away that you don't like that line right now. You don't like the Niners being favored by 3.5 on the road in Seattle.
Again, I mean, it comes back to like Russell Wilson, man. He's the boogeyman. He's the boogeyman of the 49ers, and it almost feels like he's never out of a game. That game should have been out of reach last Monday night against Washington. And somehow he crept back in it with a potential game-tying drive, and then recovered the onside kick. Now, I know they called some weird penalty on Nick Ballore, too many guys at one side, or he wasn't far enough outside the hashes. But when I look at this team and I look at Russell Wilson, I just feel like they're never out of it. So 3.5 points, I think in theory, with where the Seahawks are right now in this season, I guess it makes sense, especially with the 49ers kind of on the up. But I'm never comfortable with any type of spread when Russell Wilson is playing against the 49ers. But I'm still going to take the 49ers because if the 49ers continue to do what we expect them to do, what they've been doing over the last few weeks, that should lead to a win. I think that the Vikings offense has more cohesiveness and explosiveness right now. Like, they're ticking much better, and even Kirk Cousins playing much better quarterbacking than Russell Wilson. And the 49ers won by 8 points and really should have been a double-digit lead. They had, they were up 15 points late in that game. But I'm going to give Russell Wilson a little bit more credit than that. I don't think it's going to be any type of blowout, but I'll take the Seahawks and the points. I have the 49ers winning 24-21.
Oh, you kind of stole my thunder there. I had the Niners by 3 as well. I was thinking 27-24, something like that. And if it's a 3.5 point, look, I think that's good money. Probably a good bet with the Seahawks at home. Nemesis 49ers, sometimes division opponents, familiar. You can throw the record out the window. Getting points more than a field goal at home for the Seahawks feels like that's where the money should go. But I can't pick the Seahawks to beat the 49ers. The Niners are just flat out playing better ball. And if you're going to get bad Russell Wilson, then definitely I'm picking the 49ers in this one. Corbin, how do you see this? Niners-Seahawks Sunday, Week 13.
Not feeling optimistic at all about this matchup. And maybe that gives the Seahawks better chance to win this game because I have been god-awful on predictions this year. I followed up a year that I went 13-3 last year predicting games. This year, I've gotten 2 games right. And a lot of that's because the Seahawks can't win games. And I don't like this matchup. I really don't. I think George Kittle's going to be able to do what he wants to do. I think the 49ers will be able to run the ball. I don't think they can just come out and just impose their will right off the bat. But I do think they're going to have success running the ball. And this defense has been on the field so much that those minutes, as they have accumulated over the weeks, at some point it's going to come back to haunt them. And I could see this being a game where that comes to fruition. I don't trust this offense, and I don't trust Russell Wilson right now to be able to go out and put points on the board. They just haven't been able to do it, and nothing suggests to me that they're going to come out this weekend and suddenly be firing on all cylinders and put points on the board. So I'm going 49ers 23, Seahawks 13. I do not trust Seattle to get to 20 points unless their defense somehow creates a turnover and creates some points off of it. You just can't trust this offense right now. Wilson just looks like a shell of himself. They're not targeting DK Metcalf. The run game's been putrid for the most of the part. So I just don't trust the offense. I'm going to go with a 10-point loss and dropping to 3-9 on the season. It's just been that kind of year in the Pacific Northwest.
I will say Corbin did predict the 49ers win last time, and obviously the 49ers lost that game, right? Now,
so
there were some things
reverse
psychology. There were some things that really went in the Seahawks' favor, right? Because remember, that game, the way it started, you would have think that the 49ers are going to blow them out. I mean, the 49ers forced 5 straight 3-and-outs on the Seahawks offense. Jimmy Garoppolo only got 1 scoring touchdown out of that, and then he got hurt. Then you have Trey Lance come in who hadn't gotten any reps. There was no game plan for him or anything like that. Then you had Trent Cannon messing up on kickoff returns, and then Russell Wilson doing a Houdini spin and throw the ball to a perfect spot. So there were some things that went in the Seahawks' favor. That kind of goes to what I was saying earlier. 49ers found ways to shoot themselves in the foot and lose games early on. Is that a thing of the past, or will that come back to haunt them? I think that'll be the difference in this game.
Whew, it's going to be fun. No Debo, no Fred Warner. Will the Seahawks, Russell Wilson, figure this one out against the 49ers in Seattle, Week 13? I can't wait for it. Corbin, always a pleasure chatting with you, my man. Thanks for jumping on our YouTube channel for the first time. We've been on your YouTube, but now we got the Locked On 49ers YouTube channel going as well. So thanks to you, and say hi to all the Seahawks listeners out there for us. And Croc and I, as always, on Locked On 49ers, will be back. Thanks for making Locked On 49ers and Locked On Seahawks your first listen every day, respectively. Back at it tomorrow, right here on the Locked On Podcast Network.